Welcome to One-on-One. I'm your host, Lee Adams, and today we have a very, very special guest, someone that I always enjoy seeing in our studio. He's been with us many, many times. He's a head varsity boys basketball coach at Mount Lebanon High School. He's won 3 WPIAL titles. He's been there 6 times. He's coached for 23 years. I'd like to welcome Coach Joe David. Coach, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you back in the studio. I always enjoy when you come. I want to tell you a quick little story about your son, Jeremy. When he was younger, I'd say maybe, 10-ish, I see him somewhere in Mount Lebanon. And he comes up to me and he goes, Mr. Adams, Mr. Adams. I said, hi, Jeremy, how you doing? He goes, you interview my dad on TV. I said, yeah, I do. And he says, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. He goes, you're so good. How are you so good? And I said, well, Jeremy, there's only one answer to that. He goes, what? And I said, preparation. If you want to be good at something, you have to prepare. And I prepare for your dad. And I'll never forget that because it was the first and only kid that gave me love for this show. So I want to give some love out to your son because he gave it to me when he's a little kid.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So tell me about your family. Are they all in your business and what's going on with all that?
Yeah, so, Jeremy is married now. I have my first grandson, Jack.
Well, congratulations. You're a grandfather.
Yeah. So he turned 1 yesterday. I'm very fortunate that they live close by, so I spend just about every day with him. And it's a great time for our family. Justin is working for me, as is Jeremy. Justin's running my South Point office. Johnny goes back and forth from South Point to Mount Lebanon. And Samantha is now with the Pittsburgh Ballet, finishing up her physical therapy internship, and she'll be with us in December. So I'll have all 4 of them.
Well, she was a dancer, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was a dancer.
Was it at Pitt?
Yeah, she danced all her life. Then she was a dancer on the dance team at Pitt, and then now coming to be a physical therapist with us.
So they're all physical therapists?
They're all physical therapists. So once they all get there, there's going to be a coup.
Do you worry about a coup?
I don't know. I probably would be looking for an exit strategy if they weren't in the business, but to get up in the morning and go there and work with your children and help them and teach them and learn from them is a blessing. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
So all 4 kids are physical therapists?
Yes, yeah.
And their dad runs David Physical Therapy, right?
Yes.
And you were always in Mount Lebanon, but now you have another office?
In South Point.
In South Point?
Yeah.
And Justin runs that?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, okay. And business is good?
Business is good.
Yeah.
As long as people keep getting hurt, so we're okay.
Yeah, well,
But we've been around. I've been doing this for 30-some years. Our business is 30 years old, so I've treated high school kids that now are bringing their children in to see me. So I've been around for a while.
Yeah. Does it allow you the time to? I mean, coaching takes a lot of time. So running your business, that allows you the time to be able to do what you do coach-wise.
Yes, and the fact that they're there now makes it easier for me. And so I've limited my hours to certain hours during the week that I see patients. And the other time I devote to taking care of myself, and basketball and family and doing what I want to do.
So your grandson, and what's the name?
Jack.
Jack. When I would do the Mount Lebanon basketball games, the TV, and I would always go up to the opposing coach and just ask them some questions so I knew what to talk about for their team. And the one guy from Altoona that came in for play our girls, he said, let me tell you about Altoona. I said, yeah, tell me about Altoona. He goes, there was a time where that girls program was so good, every baby that was born in the Altoona hospital, we put a little basketball in their incubator or little crib. And I thought, golly, I mean, that's starting basketball young. So are we thinking about Jack already on the basketball court yet?
A little bit. I think whatever passion he ends up having, whether it's soccer, tennis, golf, it doesn't make a difference to me.
But it's a basketball family.
It is a basketball family. He's going to have that opportunity to dribble a basketball early on, yes.
Yeah, so it's great to have you back. We've done this many, many times, and certainly on the times when you've won the WPIAL, and other years too. We've
Sure.
had you here too. But this year is a little different because you wrote a book, Joe, and we have this book like right here. You can see it. It's called the Bora. And so I just want to understand the genesis and how this book came about.
Well, my intent was never to write a book. You know, I had two players, Antonio Garofoli and Sean Loughran, back when they were sophomores and freshmen, really good shooters. And they weren't able to get their shots off if we didn't set screens for them and do things. And I tried to create this hectic defensive scheme whereby during the transition from defense to offense, the opponent would have a hard time finding these guys to guard them. And that's how it kind of started. And I started adding to it, and started making a lot of notes and coming up with various drills, some of which have been done, some of which have never been done. And during COVID, it was a lot of free time, and I started putting it together. I thought maybe I'd have a pamphlet or just notes for myself, and then I kept writing and putting more thoughts down, and turned out to be this.
And so this starts from having two guys that play for you that were really good shooters, and they're having trouble getting the shots off. I've always felt like you always had some good shooters over the years, and you were able to spring them open with your offense and screening and double screening. But you're saying even doing that, they were having some trouble getting it off?
We could do that, but I wanted them to be able to not have to do that every single play. You know, they come down, and the opponents, you know, we play and coach against a lot of good coaches, and they're going to stick their best two defenders in their face and tell them not to look anywhere else but be in Antonio's face or Sean's face. That becomes very difficult at times. So, but you can't do that if the transition occurs and we're pressing all the time, and that guy that was told to be in Antonio's face is across the court and Antonio's over here. And that's where we started to see, at least I started to see them getting more shots, the free shots during the transition. And so it's interesting that this defensive scheme ended up being a result of me trying to improve our offense.
Yeah, I would have never thought this. It's so fascinating to me. And so this basic scheme, is it, say, like a three-quarter press? Is that what it is?
It's an all-out press.
All-out
all-out press. But the beautiful thing about it is every coach can use it. Every team can use it. You can modify it any way you want, as I have. This year wasn't a great Bora team for me. That, you know, only played 5-6 guys. They got tired. They got in foul trouble. I had to adjust things, so we couldn't really do the all-out stuff that I was able to do maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So in speaking to, you know, a lot of the coaches now, because the book's out, and so I'm getting emails and calls from coaches all over the country at every level. You know, what do they want to do with it, and what they want to put their own personal stamp on it. You're able to. So it's been a real positive thing for us. Ever since we started playing it, we've been, I think, in the WPIAL semifinals maybe 7 out of 8 years or 8 out of 9 years, something like that. Won the section the same amount of time, and it's been pretty fun to play. I think for the players, it's been fun to coach, and I think the fans, it's been fun to watch. But they don't know when we're in it fully, and they don't know when we're not in it or when we're in it half. But there's different calls for that, and different teams will play differently. So depending on who they have and what kind of ball handlers they have or big guys they have, we'll adjust it so that we still are putting some pressure on the offense. We still want to make them do things they don't want to do. But so far it's been great.
I thought I remember you telling me a story about being on a plane and starting to take notes about this on a plane from Chicago or something?
Yeah. I was just sitting there and I was thinking about those guys there in the summertime, and I was coming back from, I don't know why I was there. I'm maybe coming from the GERG camp, and I had a layover in Chicago, and I just started making notes out of what I can do to free these guys up. And actually, it wasn't what I could do to free these guys up. I knew I had to have a defense, and so I started writing down everything possible that I thought would bother an offensive player in every situation. What would bother them. For instance, if I play you defense and I stand 6 feet away from you and put my hands out and look good, that doesn't bother you.
Right.
But if I get up in your face and push up on you, do the things that you don't want me to do, then that's going to bother you. And that's kind of what the philosophy is.
I love that way of thinking because it's I think I think you think it through so well because you played at a high level. You played at University of Pittsburgh, and so you know the things that bothered you.
Exactly.
And so you used to tell me, like years ago, and that's why you like to play matchup zone because like it used to bother you.
Sure. I mean, it bothers any coach. I mean, you play a matchup zone. Our matchup zone was very successful for us. And listen, if
do you still play it?
We do.
Or it's all Bora?
We do. No, we play it. We play straight man to man. We'll do what we have to do. If two big horses move into Mount Lebanon, they're 6'8" and 6'9", you may see me in a 2-3 zone next year. I'm not. It's not like this is all we're going to do. It's based on who I have but the principles behind it are great defensive principles. And one of the things that I didn't really consider when I wrote it for coaches, but the players that have called me and read it that talked about how they are now feel like they're better defensive players because they've read the techniques, the actions, the things that we do that they try to do when they play now. And now they're better. And so that's a new angle for the book as far as if you want to be a better defensive player individually, and you read through this, you're going to find some things that are going to make you even better.
So these principles, did they all come from your playing days or also from your coaching experience?
Both. Both, playing, coaching, watching, all those types of things. So it's just a cumulative effort.
So you've had a good response to it?
Yeah. It came out in January. It's been up on high in the Amazon numbers, basketball coaching. It's weird to kind of see it there and see like Krzyzewski's book or a Wooden book or Pat Riley's book next to it, or then it goes down for a little bit when people don't buy it, people buy it. But again, I think that's it's something. This game of basketball is something that's shared. The things that I've learned, the things that I've taught, somehow seeped into me, and they're from other coaches. And our fraternity in basketball is about sharing information and teaching each other and learning from each other. And so this was just my opportunity, I thought, to give back to a game that has given me everything in my life. Every single thing in my life, from my family to my business, we can trace back to this round orange ball going in the basket. And so, people thought, like, why would you want to share these things or put these out? And now people are going to know what you do and blah, blah, blah. I said, I don't really care. I think that's something that you have to teach. You have to coach it. But it's just a way of me giving back to the game that I love.
That's awesome. How complicated is it?
It's not that complicated.
No?
No. It's just a basic, some principles and a synchronization of actions and some technique and that are fairly unique, but you have to have the right mindset. You have to have the right players. I've talked to coaches all over the country. One coach from New York has these very, very athletic players, not skilled, but he's read it and he's going to do it and he loves it because these guys can really put a lot of pressure on, and now they're making layups over turnovers and steals versus coming down and playing against a set defense. So he started doing it in the summer, and they've been very, very successful.
So it's been out for how long at this taping?
January 1. So just January, February, March, April, May. It's just 5th month.
Okay, and the response has been good, or
Very good.
Any surprises with the response you get? Like you're saying, the players you're getting from players.
Yeah, I mean it's been very good. The numbers, coming in are very, very good. I'm not too worried about that. I didn't do it to try to do that, buddy. I'm competitive, and you want it to do well. But the marketing company for it just started last week doing things. The press release hasn't even gone out, so. It's all interesting for me. It's all new stuff to me and how it's done, the cover design and all the editing and things of that nature, and the publisher doing what they need to do. It's all new to me.
Yeah. How if someone wants to buy this, where can they buy
You
it?
can buy it anywhere. They can go on Amazon. They can go to Barnes and Noble. They can go to any book distributor in the nation. It's in 35, 40 different countries now on their sites. It's not translated into that yet, but it's in their sites and it's selling over there too.
You know, it's interesting how you say that basketball has given you so much in your life, and this is one way of you giving back. But it's also the other way you give back is by coaching these young men and really becoming a big influence in their life. Yeah. I know that you have some get-togethers sometimes with your older players. Talk about those and what you like about those.
Well, I think the joy of coaching is just that, is more so, not so much the championships and things of that nature, but it's seeing those players of yours that now have their own children, their own marriages, their own issues, their own problems, going to dinner with those guys, going to lunch with those guys, them calling you and saying, Coach, can I meet you for lunch? I got something I want to talk to you about. Get an invitation to a wedding of a former player. That's really been the joy. You know, I got players that have clearances in the White House. You know, that I have players that are doctors, that are doing very well. Businesses that are doing extremely well. Adam Potter, Father Potter. I'm so proud of him and all his accomplishments. But there are so many of those guys that have done so well. But those also were guys that were very, very coachable, that really wanted to improve, that really wanted to get better, that practiced hard, and those traits just carried on. And the ones that didn't are the ones that are the most rewarding, the ones that maybe you think you had a little bit of an influence on, that maybe they were going down a different path, and maybe you twisted them around a little bit and got them on the right path. If you maybe felt that you contributed to that in some way, that's very, very rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, we both know the life lessons that we learn playing sports, and they're so valuable to the rest of your life. I mean, I know that you're used the life lessons that you've learned in playing sports for your whole life.
Yeah.
And that is rewarding for you to see that come to fruition, and these young guys turn out to be fathers and successful in their fields.
Yeah, it's hard, and we've had some bad losses. You lose in the state championship, and with the ball, right? You were there, and but those guys have all been successful. You sometimes think, they were able to bounce back. They were able to get up off the floor, dust themselves off, and be successful. Sometimes that lesson is a better lesson than the W, the win, and can teach them more and make them better. It's hard in the short term. Obviously, you don't want that. But when that happens, you look at it and say, now what can we learn from this?
Yeah, I think I've learned my greatest life lessons through the hardships of my life. And I think it can really teach you so much. And, let's talk about, you talk about the state championship team. How about the team that you played at Big Spring High School? And we go to was that a state semifinal at Big Spring?
Yeah.
And I drove all the way into central Pennsylvania, and it's this little town, and I was doing the television for your team, and there was one restaurant in the whole city, or the whole little tiny town, one red light, and they only had one thing on the menu, spaghetti with spicy meat sauce, and I had that, and it smelled like manure as soon as I rolled in. And I get to the gym really early, and you come walking in with your team, and you're like, what are you doing? And which I was the only one sitting in the gym, and that game, that team was loaded. I mean, loaded, Joe. I mean, talk about that memory right there.
Well, that's one of my best. I mean, I think to figure it out last year, I've coached close to 90 playoff games in 23 years. So, but those games against Penwood were something special because they really whooped on us. 2 years that day at Big Spring. We walk into Big Spring for a state semifinal, and the gym's like Peters Township's old gym. It's this little teeny gym, and these guys are 6'9", 6'8", 6'7", and they put it to us. But those same guys, Sean Oakman, who ended up being one of the best linemen in the country.
He was on Sports Illustrated, wasn't he?
Yeah, and we played those same guys a couple years later, and we beat them in the semifinal there at was that Cumberland? Cumberland Valley, yeah.
Cumberland.
School, and that was a great, great game. I think it's probably one of the best games that no one saw. That along with our defeat of Montverde when they were ranked, I think, 10th or 11th in the country, that no one actually saw, you know. But those playoff games, I think, are very memorable because it was the same team, my guys were the same, and we really worked for a year or two, and that was our big test again, was Penwood, and they're coming back. And we passed the test, and I was very, very excited about that. As excited to beat them as I was to get to the state championship for the first time in school's history, but I was really excited to have beaten Penwood.
I don't think I ever saw you happier. Like, it was the game that nobody saw, but I got to see it.
Yeah.
And Evan Eaton was playing on your team that year, and I saw him after the game, and it was a really funny story he told me, because he was guarding that kid that was going to WVU.
Right.
And that kid was talking smack to him during the game and saying, "You can't guard me, da-da-da. I'm going to WVU. Where are you going?" He goes, "I'm going to play intramurals in college." And it was a funny line, but like, you win the game.
Right.
You win the game. So it had to be so gratifying to beat that team after they blew you out at Big Spring.
Yeah, it was a great day.
Yeah, and then in playing Chester up at Bryce Jordan, I mean, you guys were over 20-point underdogs, and you take them to overtime.
Yeah, we had the ball, 13 seconds ago, and thought we had a nice play, and one of the players traveled, and they got the ball back, and I was so proud at that time. I remember Paul Lang going to him and saying, "Settle down. We have to defend now, so we don't lose this thing," and end up losing in overtime. But again, I don't think you could be prouder of a team or players than I am of those guys.
You were huge underdogs and almost beat them. And
they're undefeated. I think they were 26-0, hadn't lost for a couple of years, and obviously they were kind of looking down on us like this is going to be an easy one. But we were there. It was a lot of fun.
I went into the Waffle House, and there was a bunch of Chester people, and they called me over to the table, and they said, "Hey man, what do you guys got in the tank? What do you have in the tank? And what are you going to bring to us?" And I just looked at them, and I knew you were big underdogs, but I said, "What do you got to say? What do you got to say?" And I looked at them all right in their face. I said, "Well, here's what I got to say. We're going to show up. We're going to show up. We'll see. We're going to show up." I mean, I knew we were big underdogs, but taking them to overtime and almost beating them was amazing game. It was an amazing game. It was one of the real highlights. But
it'll haunt me the rest of my life. And that's okay.
Yeah, but I was at the game that nobody saw.
Yeah.
And so. When I think about the game today and the kids today and the culture today of basketball and all the people teaching skills, and I didn't have that back then. And one of the ways I learned the game was I watched basketball. And how important do you think that is for kids to do?
I think it's very, very important. And I talk about a lot of that stuff in this book. Now, I'm not trying to promote the book, but what you're getting at, I wrote a whole big thing on. Where we grew up on the playgrounds. We grew up with older guys, sometimes with alcohol in their breath, telling you what to do, who to guard, box out, and that was impactful. We didn't have people telling us what to do all the time. We had to figure it out. We had to stay on the court. We had to win to be on the court, or you're off. And nowadays, with all the different skill developments and things of that nature, I don't think you're producing a better basketball player. You're producing a kid that might be able to do drills better, but in no way, shape, or form, I think, are they any better than we were when we played. We knew the game. We understood the game. We had a better feel for the game, and I think that's sometimes what players lack when I see them now versus when I saw them maybe 20 years ago. They'd go down to the courts of Mount Lebanon, play games all the time, pick up, figure it all out. That we don't get a chance to do that anymore. There's always someone in the gym telling us what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And so this time of the year, for instance, we'll do open gyms. I'll do 30, 40 minutes of some skill work, and then we just play. There's no play, we just play. And they need that. They need that free play. I think free play has gone away. I mean, back in the day, I'd come over your house, knock on your door, Mr. Adams, can Lee come out and play? And you say, "What do you want to do?" We grab a baseball, grab a football, grab a soccer ball, grab a basketball, let's go play. We want to play catch, want to play tag, want to play whatever, and those types of things aren't there. Now, when you talk about watching basketball, I've asked my players that. How many you guys watch basketball? All the hands go up. All right, great. How many guys watch basketball with your cell phone out of your hand? and not a hand goes up. So I tell my guys all the time, put the cell phone down. Now watch basketball, because you can't watch a TJ McConnell do what TJ McConnell does and then check your feed and then do this and then text your buddy, because you got to get immersed in that game and feel like you're in that game, have a feel for that game. And the only way you can do that is by just picking a player, watching one player, what he does, and then go out and try to be that player. I mean, half the time I went out to play, I was always trying to be somebody else that I watched. I wasn't trying to be me. I was trying to be like them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if those guys today have that.
Yeah, I was Jerry West and my friend was Walt Frazier, and we would play one-on-one. And it's just interesting. I walked, the first team I ever had was the 6th grade. I mean, we were out in the playgrounds constantly playing and playing and playing. And in 6th grade, we walk on the floor and we're playing in the Penn Hills Elementary School, and we had a ton of kids. I graduated 1,300 kids. And we walk in, they give us these red uniforms, and they bring a referee, and they start playing. Next thing you know, we're in a championship game. We win it, and then we got the paper coming, taking our pictures. I said, oh, is this what happens when you play basketball? And so, like, it's just different. It's different.
Yeah.
And but it's such a great game. And I think you and I share that I love this game. I love this game, and I know you love this game. Yeah. If someone said you were a basketball junkie, would that be accurate?
I think, I love the game as much as anybody loves the game. I think in my life with what I do, I have other things that I prioritize, my faith, my family, my friends, those always come first. And, basketball is right up there with it all. I don't think that I'm a junkie in the sense that, I have to watch basketball every night. But when it comes to my team, and preparation of my team for games, I'm all in. I mean, I'm sacrificing everything to make sure that they're in a position, the best position possible to win a basketball game.
I remember talking to you at the beginning of your coaching career at Mount Lebanon, and now here we are 23 years later. How do you think that you've changed as a coach over that time?
That's a great question. I don't know. Some of my players will say I softened a bit. They'll always say I softened a bit. I don't know if I have or I haven't. I think I've learned from the mistakes. I've learned from the interactions of players that maybe I did not do a good job with. And, you try to be better. That's all. I mean, I think it's like anything else. You're never going to know everything about this game. You're never going to be the perfect coach. All you can do is go out every day, just like players do, and try to do the best job you can possibly do.
The other thing is that you talk about the mental aspect of the game. I was watching a interview of a brain surgeon who has a doctorate in neuroscience, and they asked him, what is one thing that you would tell people that is the most important thing for you to be able to do as a human being? And he said, emotional regulation. And I just thought it was fascinating, because I know for me, when I played the game of basketball, confidence was everything. Mm-hmm. Like, I had skills, I had athleticism, but confidence really dictated what I was willing to try to do. And when you lose some confidence, and it just affects every part of your game. And so, like, I know we've talked about this over the years, but I want to talk about it again because I think it's so important. You coach these kids, and there's a balance that you walk. You want your players to be confident, but then there has to be accountability for their effort and their performance. So how do you balance that, Joe?
Good question. I mean, that's what coaching is. I think you have to know your players. Some you can pat on the back. Some you got to kick in the can. Some you can yell at. Some you can't. What do I need to do to get the most from this guy? Do I got to put my arm around him? Do I have to be, that guy? Do I have to be on him a lot? Do I have to yell at him? But I think all of them, need it. Kicking the can every now and then. And my dad had a saying. He'd always just say, every child needs a pat on the back, low and hard. Okay? So
That's old school right
that's
there.
old school. So I think that I also have to prepare them for pressure situations. Mommy and Daddy and Coach David aren't going to be there for you when you're out there playing and you're stuck in a trap and we have to make a pass with 10 seconds to go to get, you have to handle that yourself. You can't look for a bailout. We can't keep bailing you out. We have to allow our children and our players to go unprotected and to evolve and allow them to make their mistakes and allow them to get up from a fall or learn from a bad situation and not try to protect them all the time, because we're just building a little cocoon around them, and that cocoon's got to be shed at some point in time. And sometimes it's up to me to do that, and sometimes it's up to me to tell them that. And sometimes parents don't like that, where I have to tell them, my team, we talk about like we're talking now.
Yeah.
Like, look, parents love you. Your mom loves you. She can do everything in the world for you. But that's not the best thing for you right now. One time I had players there, and I said, let me ask you, I had one player, I won't mention his name, but I said, I guarantee you this. I said, your mom woke you up this morning. She told you if you had a test or not. She had your lunch ready. She told you what time practice was. And it went on and on. And he went, you're right, Coach. I said, well, I get it. She loves you. She cares about you. But you got to say to her, I got this, Mom. I got this. And allow yourself to grow up. And it's a fine line. It's a fine line. And sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you don't. But you always got to try to get it right.
You're working with kids at some of the most impressionable years of their life. Obviously, the formative years are the most impressionable, but now your teenage years. Your teenage years is where your peers are so important to you. And now they join your squad, or they make your squad, and you're here to win. Mm-hmm. You're here to win. And so you have to do some work to win. I mean, people don't just give you wins. And so now you're throwing these demands on these kids, but yet you're in a very influential position. Do you sometimes realize how influential you are to your players?
Yeah, I think I realize that. I sometimes forget that, but I most of the time I realize that. But, they're in a situation where they have to perform, and I tell them that this will be, in your high school career, the hardest thing that you ever do, and I'm going to tell you that right to begin with. And if you're not into it, then go do something else. But I'm telling you right now, you're not going to like me. There'll be days you won't like me. You're going to end up loving me, and I'm going to love you no matter what. But you're going to go home and say, this guy's crazy, this guy's nuts, this guy's working us too hard, it's just the way it is. But when you see the reward side of that, then I've taught them that lesson that we talked about, that they never knew that they had that in them. They never knew they could work that hard. They never knew they could compete with that team that was more talented than them. And I think that's the lesson.
So when you run a high school program that you've done for 23 years, it becomes a culture. And the culture is led by the coach. Mm-hmm. And so you have developed a culture at Mount Lebanon boys basketball. And obviously by your record, that says a lot about your culture. But what are the parts of the culture that you've created at Mount Lebanon? What elements do you think have led to your success?
I think a lot of it's enthusiasm. I think the way we practice, the intensity of which we practice. But my job is to impose that culture on my players so that they can then self-govern. They can take care of themselves. When it's player-led, it's always better. And this year we had 3 wonderful, wonderful leaders in Riley Faribaugh, Brody Barber, Nate Girard. I mean, these guys were, before I'd say something, they'd say it. And they had the culture down pat. They insisted on the culture. If guys weren't enthusiastic, if guys were walking around, they'd be on them before I'd say a word. And so I was fortunate that way with this team this year. But I think when it's player-led and that culture can be led from your peer, it's more impactful than it would be just from me.
I got to think that that's a more recent development in your coaching career, or did that happen even in the early parts of your coaching career? I mean, this player-led thing, you know, you see Dawn Staley down at South Carolina, and she talks about the player-led culture. Is that something more in these recent years that you're seeing, and does it also depend upon the kids that you have?
I think it depends on the kids. I think we go through it every year. This is a time of the year that we really push culture down their throats. I'm getting freshmen now from the freshman team, 8th graders coming in. They don't know our culture. And so if there's a culture problem on Open Gym, I go to my seniors and my juniors. Like, hey, you got an issue here, you know. When that started, I have to believe it was part of it from the get-go, but I think you're right in that as they started defining these things, you know, you realize, yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Maybe you just kind of did it and didn't know that that's what you're doing. But I've always tried to make sure that my captains make decisions that the players have an impact on what we do and how we do things.
You know, I'm involved in youth basketball, and I've been involved for many years, over 2 decades. And, you know, I see some differences now that I didn't see maybe when I started. And a lot of it is from the home and what the parents say to me. So what do you see? Do you see things different now? Do you see a different kid and a different environment that you're coaching in than you did at the beginning of your coaching career?
Yes. Yes.
In what way? Well, how can you describe it?
Well, I think it's more of an entitlement thing. I think that, you know, I've had children of my own, and I'm as guilty as anybody in doing some of the things that I'm just talking about. And, you know, there was this era of self-esteem that, you know, make sure everybody feels great about themselves, you know, blah, blah, blah. The stuff that I've read, the psychological information that didn't work. You know, that didn't work. I think that I guess you can call it, whether it's self-esteem or entitlement, I think that it's just a difference in the player. I'm not so sure that it's not all from the cell phone. You know, I'm not so sure it's not all from the cell phone, where now you pick up a cell phone and you start, whether you're 13 or 14 or 15, and you start seeing all these things that we never saw.
Right.
And you start comparing yourself to others, and this person has this, and this person does that, and look what this guy did, and now let me show what I did. And most of it's all positive things. No one shows a lot of the negative things. I think that cell phone has really changed us, you know, and our culture, and really, you know, allowed these kids to be entertained by a small little box in their hand, when back in the day, like, what are you doing in here? It's a good, nice day. Get out. Get outside. Go. Just get outside. Open the door and get out there and figure out something to do.
Figure it out.
And we did it. And now it's just, they're so entertaining, these things, and you see it all the time. In my office, I see the parents come in and their kids, they give them that little thing, and their kids like this the entire, you know, hour just looking at this little screen. I'm not so sure that's healthy, you know.
Yeah.
I know for sure it's not, but that may be part of the reason why we're seeing a different type of a kid nowadays.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I remember raising my kids, and they would come to me in the summertime and say, "I'm bored, Daddy, I'm bored. I'm bored." Like, looking at me like I'm going to entertain them. And nobody entertained me as a kid. So I looked at them, and I always said the same thing every time. I said, "You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out." Because I had to figure it out. I mean, I know it's old school, but my kids have turned out to be terrific.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. I'm just saying that I feel what you're saying here, and having this little computer in your hand that you can look at anything all day, every day, and just get lost in this. I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying.
I would say this, my line was always, only boring people are bored. They said to me, I'm bored. It's only boring people are bored. I said, are you boring? No, they're not. Go find something to do then.
That's a good. So we had two different comebacks, but that was our comebacks.
I like that one too.
Yeah, no, I ripped the cable out too. Like I walked home, I come home one night after work, and I was thinking about cable TV and 1,000 channels, and I said, you know what, kids? I said, we're gonna pull the cable right out of the wall. And they looked at me like I was crazy, and my daughter was like, I'm not gonna see my cartoons anymore. I said, you know what? That's not important. We're coming out of the wall, and we're gonna be kids.
Yeah.
And you're gonna go out, and you're gonna play, and you're gonna figure it out. And what happens, my son goes down, and he starts playing with music, and next thing you know, he's made over 100 songs. He dropped an album on Spotify, and it would have never happened if I would have let him just become entertained with his phone and his video games and his TV.
They had the best times. I was listening to something about, it was a recent book on Audible about that, and they've done those studies where they've taken those phones from college kids and had them go out and do things. Those kids will come back and say it was the best time they've had all year. So they know it's best for them. It's just when these companies, the social media companies, are designing things to influence our neurological systems, to influence us to how, and they're sitting around talking like we're talking, but they're talking about how can we get kids to stay on the phone longer?
Right.
How can we get parents to stay on the phone longer and longer and longer?
Right.
And they're doing a good job of it.
Yeah.
So we have to counteract that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so when you started coaching, there were 4 classifications, up to 4A. Now we're at 6A. It seems, I mean, what do you think the difference is? Was it more difficult to win a WPIAL championship when it was 4A, Quad A, or at 6A? How do you look at it?
No, I think it's definitely harder at 4A.
That's what I
thought.
thought.
And I think we've won 1 at 6 and 2 at 4. I mean, 6A is a little easier. Now you have 12 teams. You got to be the best of 12 versus the best of 26 or 28 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I think it's obviously a little bit easier now than it was before.
So, you know, you went to St. Clair, and you played at Pitt, and now you coach in Mount Lebanon. And so that is such a huge rivalry, Mount Lebanon, Upper St. Clair. And I was recently doing a show with Danny Holzer and his captains. They won a WPIAL this year. And he says that he thinks the Mount Lebanon-St. Clair rivalry is as good as any in the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, what do you think about it?
I probably agree, although I don't know what they do out in Philadelphia. You know, so having not been there, I don't know. But I know that the rivalry is fantastic, and we're very fortunate to allow our players to play in that type of environment. It was like that when I first started coaching. I think the whole, you know, I went to St. Clair coaching Mount Lebanon thing was was big, and then I went through a little lull there. I remember saying to Danny a few times, like, hey, you know, it's Friday night, like this place isn't sold out. Remember back in the day when the place was sold out before, you know, the JV game and blah, blah, blah.
And they wouldn't let people in.
Yeah, and so we got back to that this year. And I think that comes from having 2 teams that, you know, are very successful teams, very successful programs, and also having good years. And I think when you have that, that creates that rivalry. And for us, it's an advantage because now you go to a playoff game and it's just like a St. Clair Lebo game. Maybe if another team didn't have that experience, it's something new to them. But these games are great for the players. They're fun to coach, and it's a great environment. And if you haven't never been to one, you should go to one.
You should go to one.
They're fun. They're fun.
The beach party at St. Clair.
They're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Which it must land different with you because you used to play with them for them, and now you coach against them. How do you reconcile that?
There's really not much to reconcile. You know, I moved in from Terre Haute, Indiana. I lived in Terre Haute, Indiana, and I moved in.
Is that Larry Bird?
Yeah, I used to rebound for Bird at the boys' club.
You rebounded for Larry Bird?
Yeah.
Joe!
You didn't know that?
You rebounded for Larry Bird?
Yeah, back in the Terre Haute boys' club. And I can tell you stories. It's a whole other show. But so when I came back, I didn't want to move back. My dad coached Chartiers Valley. We lived in Scott Township. My dad became an Orthodox priest, the first church in Terre Haute, Indiana. And I loved it out there, and that's a basketball country. You know, that's really why I fell in love with basketball. They didn't have tackle football there till I was in 9th grade. So when I moved as a ninth grader, I remember coming up the street up to St. Clair High School to be dropped off at football practice, and I was like a week late. I didn't know anybody. I told my dad.
You playing football?
I played till that point. I told my dad, turn around, and I'm just going to focus on basketball.
Why? What made you tell him to do that?
I was uncomfortable, I think, and I didn't know anybody. I was a week late to the start of the football season. I was growing, getting taller and skinnier, and I loved basketball. And so we moved back from Terre Haute, Indiana. The church's home, the rectory, was in Upper St. Clair. I wanted to go back to Chartiers Valley where my friends were. So I went 4 years to Upper St. Clair, and then I graduated, and I lived there too. So it wasn't like I was, born and raised in St. Clair. I have all the respect in the world. It's a wonderful community. They have a good program. They're well coached. They produce really good players of whom I get better in physical therapy, and I get them better to go back and play against us, And sometimes they get us and they beat us, and so you're happy for that player. And my line's always the same. I always tell them, hope you score 40, but you lose. You know what I mean? That way you're happy. So the rivalry, as far as I'm concerned, all the people that I know at St. Clair, the teachers, the administrators, they're all gone. These are all new guys and new people. And so it's not like it used to be where I used to walk in there and say, hi, Mr. Greenway, hi, Mr. Callahan, hi, Mr. Callahan's still there, my favorite teacher, but all these people that I knew, they're not there anymore.
You always, if I remember correctly, you like to have a tough schedule. Mm-hmm. And why is that?
They say steel sharpens steel, iron sharpens iron. I like to get a tough schedule. I don't care how many wins I have personally. I put a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you how many wins I have. I don't care what our schedule is. I'm trying to produce the best team possible. And you can't do that unless you play better teams. Now, you can't just get yourself thumped every day. You got to find some time to maybe be successful. But there are certain years that I'm just going to load up on everybody, and next year is one of them. I'm scheduled to play a lot of really, really good teams.
Why next year to do that?
I think we're young, and I think I want these guys to get some experience and learn and play against better players and stronger players and older players.
Do you think you could get thumped being so young?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I like to play them, and I think that it's nice to go into the playoffs and have played everybody. I mean, that's one of the things, we had beaten St. Clair, and we beat Baldwin twice. We didn't do what we needed to do to get to the Whitfield Championship, but we beat North Allegheny. I think they were the third team, right? So we beat everybody in the semis. It's just we didn't do what we needed to do to get to the promised land, and that happens some years. But you can coach them, you can't play for them, but the ball has to go in the hoop, and you have to stop the other team. If that doesn't happen, that happens. But these guys this year, I thought were really fun to coach.
You had some good leadership.
Great leadership.
Yeah. Do you think a shot clock would be a good thing for high school basketball?
Yeah, I've always been in favor of a shot clock. And people will say, well, if I'm up by 8 points and there's 2 minutes to go, Lebo's not going to shoot the basketball. Yeah, we're not. Not unless we're wide open or have an uncontested layup. But that's the rules, and my job is to win with the rules that are in place right now. And I'm going to utilize those rules to win a basketball game. And I voted for a shot clock, and I've said I want for a shot clock, but if they put a shot clock in tomorrow, I'm happy as can be.
They had a vote?
No, I'm just saying when Mike White does his thing and asks, who's in favor of a shot clock, I'm in favor of a shot clock. Always been in favor of a shot clock.
How long?
I think 30 seconds, 35 seconds is going to be plenty. Most of the time, if you watch the game, those shots are being taken before that anyhow. It just makes the end of the game a little bit different. Now you're going to have to score at the end of the game and make some points, So teams can't control the basketball as well as they can. I mean, St. Clair had a good team this year. We had a good team. I think Baldwin twice tried to pull it out, and shorten the game a bit. They can't do that with a shot clock. So it'd be to the better team's advantage.
Yeah. So I was wondering about COVID. I mean, it was a couple of really difficult years. How did it impact your team and everything around it?
I think that when you talk about the culture, sometimes the culture suffered. My guys weren't allowed to be around each other. My guys weren't allowed to have team meals. My guys weren't, together during my basketball camp in the summertime. My guys weren't able to go on trips in the summertime to play these teams and those teams, and that's where those memories were made. That's where that bonding occurs. And we weren't able to travel Christmas time to go to a Christmas tournament. And so I thought, you had this little culture, wasn't as strong as it should have been during that time. And but those guys, talk about who deserves credit. I mean, those guys, those years deserve so much credit for just being resilient and being able to come back after taking 6 weeks off and play a game in 2 days, and being pulled off of a bus. We're playing in a state quarterfinals, and we had a really good team that year, and we're rolling and saying, hey, we're not going to play this game. We need to wait 2 weeks. We need to wait 2 weeks till this thing blows over. And what happened after that. But those guys, and I worried about those guys too for a little bit. But they're resilient. They bounce back. They've all done really, really well. And now they can look back at it, and they have that memory and that lesson that they've learned. They can pass along to the next generation of people that they talk to and say, hey, here's what I went through, and I survived. So this little minor setback you're having is no big deal.
You also have deep ties to the University of Pittsburgh. You played at the University of Pittsburgh. Does Coach Gergerich still have that camp, or what?
So since COVID, no. So I used to go out and work with the NBA players for a week, the first round draft choice, second round draft choices. I think I was the only high school coach, there, non-NBA personnel there. But I went out for many, many years, so they all knew me. And that was a lot of fun, just to learn and listen to other coaches, watch players, first round draft choices. They don't know how to close out, don't know how to rotate. These guys are 18 years old, 19 years old. They played AAU. No one really taught them a lot. But he doesn't have it anymore. He hasn't had it since COVID. There's some talk about it possibly coming back again. But he's getting up in age, and but he's the guru, man. He's fantastic, and he's what every coach should try to be like.
He probably likes you writing that book.
He read the book, and he wrote something on the back for me. Yeah, and I sent him the book, and when it wasn't published, and I said, hey, I'd love for you to take a look at my book. I sent it to him, Tom Crean, Seth Greenberg. Yes, it was my coach at Pitt, and Tom Crean I met at the basketball academy in Memphis. And all those guys read it and liked it and made notes. And Gerg called me up and he said, hey, that intro is fantastic. Every coach should read the intro. And I thought, all right, great. So he read the intro. He didn't read the rest of the book. So I appreciate that, Coach. He says, now, you have a paper and pencil? I said, yeah. I said, page 152. You said this, and he says, page, 175, and so he went through all these little things, and so I couldn't be more appreciative of having a mind like that read through it and tell me what they thought.
So who coached at Pitt when you played there?
Roy Chipman. Yes.
And was Gergerich an assistant?
No, Gerg was coached before that. So Gerg coached them in the Eastern 8 and then left Pitt, and then went out to be an assistant coach with UNLV, at UNLV with Jerry Tarkanian. Went on to be an assistant coach in the NBA for many, many years. Is considered one of the biggest defensive gurus in the NBA.
So this is a defensive book, so
yeah.
It's no wonder he read your book.
Yeah, and he was with the Mavericks when they won it, and he was with Cleveland, he was with Minnesota. These guys consult with him. I think he's 78. Years old, but just a wonderful, wonderful man. To listen to his players talk about him with such reverence is amazing. These guys, they love him. Sam Clancy, those guys, he can do no wrong. He is it. He is it.
That's great. I remember you telling me a story about being at that NBA summer thing. And I think you were coaching with Rick Carlisle one time. And
Yeah.
talk about that.
Well, I was there probably 8 years, maybe 9, and you know, the first time I went out, I kind of watched. Second year I went out, I kind of joined a couple of the guys that I knew that I'd actually coached at 5-star camp. Now are NBA coaches, and now I'm starting to work with Atlanta. I work with the Dallas Mavericks. I work with those guys and those coaches, doing drills, and then now all of a sudden, I look on the list and I have a station, you know, where all these guys come down to you and you rotate these stations, and everybody else has, you know, Boston, New York, and I got, you know, and these guys are like, Mount Lebanon. What's Mount Lebanon? I'm like, hey, I've been there 8 years. So, and then, you know, at night we play games, and normally I'd sit on the bench and watch and help out and talk to guys as they come off and help them out. The last couple of years, we are moving from game to game, and they said, Coach, you know, here's the board, you got it. You know, I said, sure, I'll take the game. And I coached, you know, that game, and it was a combination of the Mavericks and the Hawks guys. And my first game I was coaching, sitting to my right was Rick Carlisle. And
How were you feeling?
I was feeling good. I think we end up an overtime game. I think we lost in overtime. And I told my guys that if they shoot a three-point shot, don't charge the hoop, because they can get the rebound, throw it back after another three-point shot. It's like what happened to us at North Allegheny this year, even though we won. But they did, and they hit a shot. And but I coached a few games. I coached some of the situation practices we had at night. And I remember sitting there and having Rick Carlisle to my right, thinking, you know, this is kind of cool. You know,
Well, now
you
he's
have anything to add? He goes, no, you got it. You got it. So.
well now he's coaching in the Eastern Conference NBA semifinals
Yeah.
with a guy, with a kid on his team that you coached against, T.J. McConnell.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about that story.
Yeah, I mean, TJ's is just fantastic. You know, I mean, I watched TJ's, I believe his first game ever at Arizona. Evan Pierce, my player, was playing Augustana College in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I promise all my players I'll see him play once. But going to South Dakota is kind of rough. So he's playing Arizona. So I flew out to Arizona, and TJ's playing, and he sees me before the game, because TJ sees everything, right? Waves, and we're trying to get together after the game, but he couldn't get together with me and Evan Pierce. But, you know, I tell my players all the time, if you can watch a game, a Pacers game now, or a Philadelphia game when they play for Philadelphia, and just watch T.J. McConnell. Just watch what he does. Watch what he does defensively. Then go out, like we talked about before, and try to be him when you play. You know, act like him. Watch what he does. Watch where his eyes are. Watch the way he stands. Watch the way he moves to the basketball. Watch the way he anticipates where the ball's going to be. I've never seen a player you anticipate or see the play before it evolves better than TJ. You know, he's fantastic. And I saw him at his cousin's wedding, I think it was last year, 2 years ago. We were sitting there talking. I'm looking at this guy, he's like 6'1". I'm thinking, how in the world does he do what he does? But he does. And, you know, he's to be commended for that. And it's a pride thing for Western Pennsylvania basketball. You know, when you talk about it, Western PA basketball, and you mention his name, you know, you can kind of stick your chest out and say, yeah, he's a Western Pennsylvania boy, and he's done so well for himself, and really happy for him.
I mean, I coached against him in 4th grade, and we had a really athletic team, and we had a couple of point guards that could stop dribble penetration. And I always tell the story, we played him in the first round of the playoffs, and TJ was the smallest kid on the floor. And we held TJ, and we were very athletic, and we held him to 39 as a 4th grader. And why? Because he had a hesitation move at the time where I'm trying to talk to my kids. I'm like, he's coming down, he's rising, and then he's bursting on you. Don't rise when he rises. But, you know, we could say it, but it just wasn't working.
Easy.
He was just way ahead of his time. And then when he went up to play Newman Goretti in the state championship up at the Bryce Jordan, and I mean, they were big underdogs too. When they walk on the court and they had 4 D1 kids on Newman Goretti, I just sat there. I was back when the girls, and you went to the state that one year, and our girls went to the state several years in a row. But right after the girls' game, TJ was playing, and you know, I don't think Newman Goretti took them serious. And especially when they walked on the floor, it didn't even look like these two teams should be playing one another. But I just focused on TJ. and he scored 32 in that game, and he almost won it.
I almost
at the
won it
end.
for him. I watched that game.
Yeah, you remember that? And I'm thinking, how is he scoring like he's scoring? What's he doing? And what I came up with, Joe, was like he was so good at the hesitation. He would come down and rise, and then he would go again. And sometimes they were so quick they could stop it, and then he'd flip and he'd do a spin real fast, and he's at the rim. And these guys, I don't think ever saw a kid like that
Well,
really.
he was good at a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know, Pete Serio and Susie McConnell Serio lived on my street in Upper St. Clair. So TJ would always play with our kids, and whether it was kickball or soccer or he was good at everything. And he had that same feel for the game no matter what we were doing. He would do things above and beyond everybody else.
He really, it's a great story, and I just wish, I'm a big TJ fan, and I hope they go all the way.
Yeah.
Even LeBron and all the other NBA players are giving him a lot of love, which is, I mean, it's just an incredible story.
Yeah.
You know, I had B.B. Flannery in here, he played at Duquesne in the 70s, and he's one of the dozen or so parade All-Americans that came out of this area. I got to play against him in high school. He was a problem, Joe. And so, but he played
him play.
the Duquesne Dukes. Yeah, he played for Duquesne Dukes.
From Valley High School.
Yeah,
New
Valley High
Kensington.
School. We played at Valley, and there was a couple times where I was a check back guard, and Benji Pryor, a Pitt guy, he just threw the outlet to TJ, and it was me and BB like half court one-on-one. That was a problem. I mean, this guy had high basketball IQ, and he had a lot of skill. And he was kind of a showman, but he was a lot of fun. We spent...
When I moved in from Terre Haute, I told one of my best friends, Jimmy McDonough, I said, best player in America is Larry Bird. No one's heard of Larry Bird. He countered with B.B. Flannery. He said, no, the best player in America is B.B. Flannery.
Jeez.
I think I got him on that one, though.
Jeez, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, he tried out for the Celtics with Pistol Pete Maravich, and made it to the final cut. But what a great guy he is.
Yeah.
And they're naming a court after him in New Kensington. And he got emotional talking about it. But, basketball is a game that I think it just brings people together. Your assistant, George Elias, who is just a terrific guy. And, I was talking to him one day, and he said, Lee, I moved different places in the country, and one of the things I would do is I would just go find out where they were playing basketball, and I would go play basketball. And he's like, I would meet people there, and it was just a way to get ingratiated into the new place that I was living in. I just thought I kind of knew that, intellectually, but he talked about doing it actually. And it goes back to when we were playing pickup basketball. So you played pickup in Terre Haute, but then when you got here, where was the pickup games for you in high school?
Right. We're stone's throw away, right here at Municipal.
Yeah.
We played here. We played over at the park, whatever that park's called over there now, down the street from behind where Kings used to be.
Yes.
I'm drawing a blank on the name.
Yeah, me too.
We played it there, and we had great games. And it was a lot of fun.
Well, when you're a student of the game, and you have a lot of assistants that's work for you, what's your leadership style in terms of making decisions? Are you a more collaborative guy, or are you someone you want to hear what people got to say, but you have to make the final decision? What kind of leader are you?
I think I'm not as collaborative as my assistant coaches sometimes want me to be, but I count on my assistant coaches a lot, particularly the guys that have been with me for a long time. Now, George has been with me for a while. Tyler was with me for a long time. He's coming back next year with me. Those are guys that we have a history with and know what I like to do, how I like to do things, and those guys I can count on a lot. But when you have a new guy come in who hasn't been down that road before, it's not as easy. They have to really spend the time with you to know what you're thinking. They'll say things and I'm not going to ever do that, But I think these last couple of years, given that I've had my assistants end up going some places or doing other things or getting jobs, head coaching jobs, I've been more on the island by myself, at least so much, counting on George Elias, who's with me now for 20 years. He knows me sometimes better than I know myself, and I'm very, very fortunate and grateful for for his loyalty and him being by my side all these years.
What does he bring to your team?
He's just a classy guy. He's just a classy guy. He has a good basketball IQ, good basketball knowledge, not afraid to tell me if he thinks I'm doing something wrong, and not afraid to upset the apple cart. Definitely not a yes guy. We start out by everything I did was wrong in George's mind. So I love that. I'm that guy that loves criticism, the guy that loves you telling me what to do. If I'm doing something wrong, it doesn't bother me. If I truly want to be the best at what I do, I have to have people telling me if they think something's wrong, because I either got to defend it or fix it. And but he does. He has great relationships with the players. He spends a lot of time with them. Sometimes, you got to kind of have to do good cop, bad cop. He knows that. If I'm on little Lee Adams today and I'm on you hard, then he knows that he's got to go over to Lee Adams and put his arm around him and say, hey, coach just cares about you. He's trying to make you the best basketball player you can possibly be. He's got to be that guy.
That's a great contribution. It really is. And he's a great guy.
Yeah.
So I know you do basketball camps, and I know you enjoy what you do, and I know you enjoy working with the kids. So I know there's parents out there, there's kids out there, they live in your area, they want to play basketball. And you're the guy, you're the coach at the high school team. And so these parents, they'd be watching this, or the kids might be watching this, and they want to know what you have to say if they want, to get on the court to play with you. Because when I was in 6th grade, I went to a Penn Hills High School basketball game, and I saw George Carl. And George Carl destroyed North Braddock Scott and scored 35, and I saw the atmosphere around here, and I just thought, that was the first game I ever went to, and I thought, I have to do this. I have to be there, and I have to do this. That's how magnificent it was. And so what do you tell kids? But I didn't realize how hard it was going to be to get there, but it's when you love a sport and you're passionate about something, it doesn't feel like work. And so what do you tell kids that if they want to get on your team and get on the floor and playing time for your team, what do they need to do?
Well, what I would tell them to do is watch basketball without a cell phone. Come to basketball games anytime you can. Go play with your friends one-on-one, two-on-two. Keep the basketball in your hands. Dribble the basketball. Don't worry about shooting as much. Do not, by any means, worry about a three-point shot when you're in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. Learn the form, get the form right, and just find the players that are successful and find out what they do. And if you're going to use that phone, then use it for things like looking at what Kobe did for a workout, the Kobe stories that are out there, the Bird stories that are out there, the Jordan stories that are out there. Read autobiographies of these guys and see what made them successful, what made them tick. And by all means, understand that you're never going to play for me unless there's some type of sacrifice, that you've given up something that you love for this game. And if you do that, then you're going to be very successful. And if you don't love basketball, then sacrifice basketball for something else that you love, for baseball or for golf or for your education or whatever you want to do. But nothing great ever comes about unless you sacrifice something.
What do you think about multiple sports?
I love multiple sports. I think that, from a physical therapy standpoint, having that body do something different at different stages of the season and of the year is very important. I see some of these girls, particularly, August, September, they played 80 games, 90 games, and they're a little more vulnerable to ACLs. And, that wasn't happening back in the day. They weren't playing all those games. Boys too, you worry about them all the time. Basketball, same movements with their legs where, after basketball season, we went and played baseball. We stood in the outfield, we swung, we hit, we didn't run that much, didn't jump that much. We played some, pickup, but it wasn't every single day. So I think that the multiple sport guys aren't really an issue for me. I think back when I first started coaching, you want your guys as soon as possible so you can get your team ready. But I've learned that I'd just as soon have my guys come over as a champion late than not being successful early. Because that championship culture, when that walks into your door, that's different when they've been successful, and I like it. I tell guys, go ahead, play. I have guys just came to the open gym for the first time yesterday. They were in track and field, and they ran, they high jumped, they long jumped, they ran hurdles. It's great. And now look what they got. They got May, June, July, August, September. They have all year to continue to play basketball if they so wish. But we sometimes get caught up in so many games. I tell my players, I was in 8th grade in Terre Haute, Indiana. I played 13 games all year. 8th grade, all year, 13 games. That's what I played. These guys, 80, 90, 75. It's crazy the amount of games they played. And it's because if you play 5 AAU games in a weekend, you think you play a lot of basketball. But what did you do individually? How many shots could you have gotten up individually? How much ball handling skills did you work on when nobody's watching? Which is when you get better, right? When no one's watching you. And these kids come home and they're tired, rightfully so. They come back from Cleveland, they played 5 games, they in hotels running around all night. They come home and they're not going to go out there and shoot 500 shots or do their ball handling drills. So that's where it suffers.
So what do you think of the AAU model? How does it? I know people that are in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade kids, and they're traveling all over the country. What's your thoughts about the AAU model versus skill building?
Yeah, I think skill building is the way to go. I think there's a place for AAU if you want to play some games or be on a team where maybe you're not going to play on your high school team, but you can play on this AAU team. I'm okay with that. It's just the amount of games that they play. But you can't compromise your individual work. If you compromise your individual work, then AAU is going to be a bad thing. If you do play AAU and play a limited amount of tournaments, but you come home and you get your shots up and you lift your weights and you do your ball handling drills, and then it's fine.
How important for you is your relationship with the players?
I think it's everything. It's everything. This year, we had went to Fort Lauderdale and we stayed in a home, twice with the whole team was just in a house. It was kind of fun. Everybody get to bed. Everybody wake up. And that was a lot of fun. I get a chance to get to know these guys personally better during those trips than I do during the year because I'm not in the school. But I think that you have to have a relationship with all those guys, some type of relationship. And that relationship, it's not easy sometimes. It's just not easy. But, I think the guys that I see every year, the guys that continue to text me and come over for I have a get-together every year from all my former guys, it's been just a wonderful thing. Other guys I haven't done as good a job with. I may have missed the boat or didn't get a chance to know them as well as I wanted to. You just try to get better, that's all.
If a big kid that's clumsy wants to play basketball, what do you have to say to him?
I tell him to be patient with himself. You're going to develop slowly. And I tell him he has to go out and work. And if you do what I ask you to do, and if you do the things that you're told to do, you'll be fine. Grant Ladis would tell you if he was right here that he couldn't dribble the ball down the court as a freshman and make a layup. I spent a month saying left foot, right hand, Grant, left foot, right hand. But he had the determination to want to be great. And he worked hard, and he ended up leading the PAC, the President's Conference, in block shots and rebounds at St. Vincent. Had a great career. But you have to be very careful that you don't allow somebody to tell you that, look, you can't do this. You're too clumsy. You know as well as I, basketball, all the big guys have almost the same story, don't they? That at some point in time, they never thought they were going to be any good. I got a chance to be with Dr. Andrews, a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon, #1 in the world, Andrews Institute. But he told me a story about Shaq because he knew Coach Brown from LSU. And Shaq came to him and he said, when he was in Germany, because his father was stationed in Germany, and said to him, "Coach, what can I do to become better? I'm no good. You know, I'm clumsy. I can't do anything." And he said, "Well, soldier." He went, "Soldier?" He said, "I'm 12 years old." And Coach Brown grabbed him and said, "Where's your daddy? Where's your daddy?" And but even guys like Shaq, well, you know, took time and time and time and time and. But you have to have that persistence and that mindset of wanting to be that growth mindset of wanting to get better and better and better. If you have that, then it may not be this year or next year. It might be the following year. That's fine. I mean, the Robbins kid from St. Clair, Kim Seaver's son, didn't play as a sophomore. He had a heck of a year this year, coming back next year. And, you know, I don't know. I haven't seen his development till that point in time, but it sounds as though that's kind of what happened with him also.
Well, you've had a great 23 years in Mount Lebanon, Joe. Like, how much do you think you have left in the tank?
I got a lot left in the tank.
Do you?
I still enjoy it. When I don't enjoy it, I'll walk away. I don't know when that'll be. But you know, I still enjoy, particularly this time of the year where you have just all these raw materials and you're trying to figure out what can I do to make this team compete next year. You know, that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun. When I stop having fun doing it, then I'll walk away. But I still enjoy it. You know, I really enjoy it.
What's in it for you? What is your gratification for? I mean, you spend a lot of time, Joe, coaching. I mean, it's year round.
Yeah.
And so, what's in it for you?
What's in it for me is I got into this to give back to a game that I love. To try to teach young men life lessons through the game of basketball, and trying to do things the right way and instill discipline and teaching them those lessons. I think that's really the gift. You know, the championships are great, but those championships, I've been there, I've done that. To me, it's always about the player. Like I just want it for them. I want it for my assistant coaches. I want to see the smiles on their face. I want them to realize, you know, what they've done, how the journey was to get there and learn that lesson. And sometimes you don't get it and you learn as good a lesson as you do when you do get it. But I don't get too worked up about, you know, I didn't win this or I didn't get that or we have won this or we won that. We try to keep that even keel. And we have a saying, you know, for us, it's always so what, next play. You know, so we say, so what, next play. You made a mistake, so what, next play, move on. Or you lost a big game, you know, so what, next play, move on. Or you've won a big game, so what, next play. We gotta keep getting better.
Where did you get the idea to bring training of the mind into your basketball team?
Well, there's a group out of San Francisco that started, it was called Lucid Technologies, and they had this mental training program. They don't have it anymore, but it was a 5-minute everyday episode where they talked about mental training, and we still do it now, though, through a different platform. But we do meditation, we do breathing almost every single day before we start practice. We take 5 minutes to work on the mental aspect of the game, and I think that's really worked out well for us.
That's really great. Well, I'm so pleased that you could come in and spend some time with us. It's been a little while, but now you have your book, and you write this book on defense, and Tim Gergerich read the whole thing, every page, and gave you some ideas and some feedback. But I think it's great that you did that. I always say all the time myself that the reason I'm very involved in youth sports, it's because sports did so much for me and sports gave me so much. My father died when I was young. Like, sports as a teenager helped me not go do the other bad things that were trying to draw me into it, and it kept me on a positive path, and it allowed me to go to college because they were all going to college. And so sports impacted my life in a huge way, and you talk about that yourself and what it gave to you. And so you give back by coaching and spending all that time, and now you're writing a book. And I just think it's terrific that you understand what is given to you and you're trying to give back to it. And in this book, you know, maybe some of the coaches might read this book and it might help them compete against you, but you're not really worried about that, are you?
No, I'm not worried about that at all.
No.
I hope it helps them out. I really hope. That's the reason why I wrote it. And I appreciate it, and all the things that you just said to me apply to you. And maybe these guys don't know that, but all the work that you do for our program and all the work that you do in Mount Lebanon and your support over all the years means a lot. I don't get a chance to say it as much as I should say it or get the chance to see you because of some health issues. And you look fantastic, by the way. And to me, that's as satisfying as winning any championship. But thank you for all that you do for Mount Lebanon and for Mount Lebanon basketball, for the Mount Lebanon community. You're a big part of everything that we do. Every championship we have, every win that we have, you can look and say, hey, these are guys that were in our youth programs, and you know, your stamp is on that. So I appreciate that and want to make sure that you know how grateful we were for that.
Thank you, Joe. It's so great to have such stability in a varsity program like you've provided Mount Lebanon. I mean, you've been here for more than 2 decades, and you still say you have a lot of gas in the tank, which is, I think, great news for the community because you're such a terrific leader. And you know, I always say that coaching high school basketball, if you got a great coach, that equals points. Like you're going to get points because of that. And I always realize that when you beat a team that you shouldn't beat, and you've done that many times. And that's why I brag about you, because I think the top tier coaches are the coaches that beat teams that they shouldn't beat. And that's,
Thank you.
Anybody can beat teams they should beat, but there's few that beat teams they shouldn't beat. Like when you beat that Penwood team in Cumberland, and as happy as you were, I get it because that team had so much more talent than you had, but you beat them.
Yeah.
You know, and it just made you so happy, and I was happy to watch your joy, and you love watching the joy of what you're saying. You love watching the joy of your kids and your assistants, and it's a wonderful thing. And you can't duplicate this. Sports is just beautiful.
Thank you.
But I appreciate you coming and spending time with us. This book is really terrific. I appreciate you, this copy, and I'm going to talk to my friends about this and see if they can take a look at it because I think they're always looking for some basketball help. But Joe, I just wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I hope that we get to see you again soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome, and send my best wishes to your family also.
Thank you.
And I thank you for watching. Please join us for another edition of One-on-One. Take care of yourself.